Hey guys, so today I want to make a video to show you how to change the logic board motherboard in the iPhone X. So I've gotten a lot of questions in previous videos about changing the motherboard out in a phone, whether that can fix iCloud lock or not. It can if you are changing it out with a board that you know is free of iCloud lock. The other thing is you have to have Face ID along with the motherboard. They're paired together from the factory. So if you get a new board but you don't have the Face ID with it, it's not going to work. At least the Face ID part won't work. So make sure you know what board you're getting, whether it has Face ID paired from the factory with it, and then you should be good. So the first thing you want to do is power off your device. So go ahead and do that next. So next, in the bottom of the phone right here, there's two pentalobe screws right here. The screw size is 0.8, at least that is what it is in my set. So go ahead and remove those two screws. So next we will use a heat gun or a hair dryer or something and soften the adhesive along the edge of the screen right here. So this is the heat gun that I use, but you can just use a hair dryer for this as well. And don't get it too hot, just soften the adhesive a little bit. Now you don't have to apply heat if you don't have any way to do so, but it does make it easier. You don't want to put too much, you want to be able to touch it, you don't want to have it too hot, just do a little bit at a time. So next, the best thing that I found is a really thin pry tool like this. It's made of metal, so you have to be careful, but it's very thin. And I like to slip in right down here in the bottom. If you put some heat in there, it opens up really easy. Then I use this thing like a guitar pick or something. Just like to slip in right beside it. All that you use that thin one for is to get it started. Then you can just slide along in here. You want to break that adhesive apart. So now you have to watch on this side right here, right above where the power button is. There's some cables in there, and the screen will tip up like this. So when you're going up this side, you want to make sure you don't go in very far, but you will want to loosen it all the way. So just to double check, the main parts, you don't want to go in too far with your pick right here on this side or on this side as you're opening it up, but you do want to loosen the whole thing. Then you can tip the whole screen up like this at a 90 degrees. So next, I already removed these screws, but you want to remove these 5 screws right here in this cover right here. They're a tri-point size 0.8. That's the size in my set anyways, and that's what you need to do. Now make sure when you remove those screws to put them in the right order. Wherever you lay them down, I would recommend laying down with this cover. That way you know exactly how they go back together because they're different lengths. Next, you just grab this cover and set it off with your screws. Alright guys, when we open this up, the very first connector that we want to disconnect is this bottom one right here. So go ahead and disconnect that. That's the connector for the battery. It's the third one up from the bottom. Then first we'll remove this connector right here. Remove that one there for the screen too. And we'll also want to remove this one for the screen. And this one here is stuck down with a little bit of adhesive right there, so make sure to pull that off very carefully. Then the screen will come off just like that. I'll include a link in the video description for any of the tools that I'm using today or any of the parts that I'm replacing. Anything that I think might be helpful to you, I'll include a link in the video description below the video, so check it out there. Also guys, if this video was helpful to you so far, I would appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That would be helpful to me. Alright, to remove the battery, there's a pull tab on the top part here, and there's 3 pull tabs on the bottom one here. So we need to remove those. So let's start with the top one right here. Just going to separate this pull tab here. It's usually stuck to the battery. Now sometimes you can just grab and pull them. It's kind of hard to get a hold of it, so I'm going to pull it out here with my tweezers. So once you get a hold of it, if you have a tweezers, you can wrap it around there and kind of pull it out. And they stretch a lot. So that part's all loose. Alright guys, well, we're faced with 2 options. I wanted to address this because there's a good chance that some of you are going to have this issue. These tabs here are way too tight to get in here. Sometimes they can vary where they can place the battery here, like it can crowd this side a little more and there's more room in here. I've seen this before, but on this particular one, this gap is very tight right here, so I'm having a really hard time getting these pull tabs up. Usually you're supposed to be able just to grab the pull tabs and release them like we did the top one. So we have 2 options. One, we can heat the back side right here very carefully with a hair dryer or heat gun, and we can try to do it that way. And then you can lever with the back side of your tweezers. You don't want to use anything sharp for this, but you might be able to work something under there that you can pry this battery up and do it that way. So the other option is we can remove this loudspeaker and Taptic engine so we have room to get in there, and then we can do the pull tab. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll show you how to do that really quick. So I don't want to make this too long, but right in here there's 9 screws. So these three here are Phillips. This one here is Phillips. The rest of these are tri-point. There's 9 total with both of them. There's this little cover that comes off with this screw right here. So just set it off with the screw when you do it. And then we can gain access to this part. So next, now that we have all these screws out, we're going to go down in here. There's a little connector right here. And then this part will pop out of there. Next, we can undo this little connector right here. Then this loudspeaker will tip up out of here, like this. Set that off to the side. Next, there's a little connector right here for the Taptic engine. And then this Taptic engine will just lift right out of here, too. Let's go ahead and remove this one. Now the battery is free to lift out of here, just like that. Okay, now that we have the battery out of the way, now we can remove the Face ID right here. So what we need to do is we need to disconnect this connector right here, and this connector right here, and this connector right here. So these three. This one seems like it's probably been removed before because these aren't stuck down very well. As you can see, there's adhesive that sticks these down. And then on this end right here, we need to slide this out, and then it can pick up. Then that whole part will lift out of there just like that. Now the reason that I am showing removing the battery and the Face ID when you change your motherboard is because you will need to swap out your Face ID with your motherboard when you're doing it. Otherwise Face ID won't work. So that's why I'm showing it both ways. If you want to take a chance and just replace your logic board, you don't need to remove the battery for that or the Face ID for that. You need to disconnect them, but then you can just go ahead and do the rest of the steps. But this is to show you how to remove the battery so that you can get out the Face ID, then you can replace that with the logic board. So now to continue on with removing the motherboard, make sure to use your SIM eject tool and remove your SIM card tray. Now we will begin by removing these Phillips screws. So go ahead and remove those and make sure to set them in the correct order. Now next we will disconnect these various connectors right here, like the rear camera, all these connectors. Make sure to use a plastic pry tool or your fingernail. Don't use anything metal for this. Pry that up. Then there's a connector on this corner as well. So make sure that all the connectors are disconnected. So now we can also remove this part here around the cameras. Set that off to the side. Then now we can carefully pry up right in this corner right here. Make sure that it doesn't catch on any of the connectors. Then the whole logic board comes out just like that. Now let's go ahead and reinstall our logic board. The tricky thing to watch out for is all these different connectors here. They're sticking in from all directions, and that's the trickiest part of setting the board in here. If it doesn't want to set in there right, you know that there's a connector in the way. So then we can go ahead and reconnect a few connectors, get them out of the way. Make sure to not force a connector if you can't get it on there. I would recommend doing it by hand so you can feel it. Make sure it's started on there square. You do not want to mess up any of the connectors on the board here. Now we can start by bringing this part in here around the cameras. You have to kind of tip it up as you set it in there and then set it down. So put those 2 screws in that part. Next we can set this little guy down in there and then put those 3 screws back in. Next we'll set the Face ID right down in there. Now if you get this end in first, then keep this end down a little bit this direction. Push down and in at the same time. That kind of locks it in there. Now let's go ahead and reconnect that. Now that's reconnected good. You can stick down all the cables. Now let's reassemble this bottom part. First we do the Taptic engine. Set it down in here. Then we need to reconnect this connector right here. You can use your finger or something carefully to get in there. Make sure that's seated correctly. Next we'll grab our loudspeaker, set it in there. Then this connector has to be connected. Next we have this part. First thing is we need to connect this connector down in here. It's a little tricky, but you can do it with something that you can stick down in there. Then this can just set on there and it'll all stay in place when we get our screws back in. Then you can put this little shield right here on top of that part. Then go ahead and put all those screws back in. Alright guys, the best thing to do for the adhesive is buy it as a kit. I will link down in the video description where you can get this adhesive. And then what I would do, it's a lot easier. I would stick it onto the battery first. You have to peel one side off and then stick it down on the battery like this. Then you'll want to fold these back so you can access them next time if you ever need to remove this. Then you just want to grab your battery. Just kind of center it down in there the best you can. Press it down good. And you're all set for reassembly. Alright guys, the next thing to do is check for your waterproof adhesive here, the old stuff, and make sure to peel it all off. I use a tweezers like this. It's really fine and can get under there. If you don't have one, you can just use whatever you can to get it started. Sometimes it'll peel up. If you get it started, you can pull it and it'll just stretch really long. But make sure to clear all that off. Alright guys, so I definitely would recommend to replace the waterproof adhesive. It's not that hard to do. It's very inexpensive. It'll help retain your water resistance. It may not be quite as good as from the factory, but it'll still be a lot better than nothing. So usually it comes like this. You can peel one side off, and then the part up here with two holes goes towards the top over the Face ID, and it usually sets nicely in place. So just go ahead and press this down everywhere in place. Alright, then once you got it pressed down, you can usually grab it somewhere and get it started and peel this part off. Try not to peel it up with it. Sometimes it's a little tricky. And like I had mentioned, I will include a link in the video description below the video where you can get all this stuff, like the waterproof adhesive or any parts that I used during this repair. So you can check it out there. It's very inexpensive to do it, like I said, and so it's definitely worth doing. Now after you peel it off, just check it and make sure that none of it came off out of place. If it did, you can generally tweak it just a little bit, but I would recommend not messing with it more than you have to so it doesn't lose its stickiness. Alright, so the next thing, now that you got your adhesive on here, try to get your screen over here close, but so you don't get it stick into the adhesive at all. And let's get our connectors reconnected. So get that one in there. Now you got all your screen connectors connected. Let's go ahead and reconnect the battery right here lastly. Now that we got the battery reconnected, without touching any of this stuff, let's go ahead and lay the screen down gently and start up the phone and make sure that your touch is going to work. Alright, so now that your phone's powered up, you can test out your touch. So you can see everything's working. Go ahead and shut on your phone again. Now that your phone is shut down, let's go ahead and tip this back up. Alright, so now that we've tested, make sure everything works. Now we can put our shield back on here. So go ahead and put those 5 screws back in there. Alright, so now that you got all your screws in the shield there, go ahead and carefully lay this down. You just line it up. Push it in all the way around. So then you want to put your 2 pentalobe screws back in the bottom right there. Then if you took your SIM card out for any reason, go ahead and put that back in. Then lastly, start up your device. So as you can see, everything's working. Yeah guys, if you got this phone all together and you don't have any screws laying around anywhere, you didn't lose a bunch, then you did awesome. So congratulations. And as always, I love hearing from you guys. Be sure to drop me a comment down below the video. Let me know if you have any questions about this repair. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. That would be helpful. Also come hang out with me on Instagram at SmartEasyDIY. I'm usually pretty active on there, so you can follow me on there to see what's going on. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.